Hi, I'm L-Dog. I've been part of the Ring Racers community for over 7 years, ever since SRB2 Kart released, and conservatively, I've played over 2,000 hours across both games. Over the course of those 2,000 hours, I've learned a lot, and I'm here to share my insights with you so you don't need to spend nearly that long learning. This is my relatively unscripted video on countersteering and counterdrifting. This is more of a 102 course. You're expected to know how to drift already, but just in case you don't know how, or you've never played Ring Racers, or any kart racer for that matter, I'll demonstrate quickly for you. If you do know already, or you're sick of my yapping, there'll be timestamps below for you to jump ahead. Let's be real. You've played Mario Kart before. You know how to drift, you know what it does. You hold the drift button and left or right to drift left or right. The longer you drift, the higher tier spark you get, the bigger drift boost you get. You can also use the spark to triangle dash, but I already made a video on that. I'd also like to specify two terms, as they'll be very important in this video: facing angle and momentum angle. I've mentioned these previously, but as a quick refresher, your facing angle is the direction your character is facing. This angle changes based on your steering inputs, whether or not you're drifting, and is used by items to determine the direction they shoot towards. As so. You can also see on the minimap it's represented by the little dot around my character's icon. Your momentum angle is the direction your character is moving. On the ground, it will slowly adjust towards your facing angle. This is called steering. And in the air, it's not modified at all. Things like dash rings modify your momentum angle without changing your facing angle. So, before we talk about the how and where of counterdrifting, let's first talk about the why. I was actually struggling to formulate my thoughts on this, until Velocitoni, one of the lead gameplay developers, put it into words simply for me. Unlike real life, Ring Racers has no directional friction. Surfaces apply friction, you fight against it, simple as. This is what gives the game a floaty, UFO-type feeling, in his words. Counterdrifting is a way to control your kart despite directionless friction, letting you strafe left or right while keeping your facing angle relatively unchanged. With it, you can avoid traps, nip into tight corners, and take incredible lines. When someone mentions counterdrifting, the first thing that comes to my mind is the second set piece in Nova Shore. Let's drive through it slowly, and I'll break it down. It starts with a water slide into a death pit, where players are expected to make a hard left into the next section, a small kink in an otherwise straight line. It's not really a straight line, but the straightaways are facing the same way. You know what I mean. This one set piece shows off two of counterdrifting's most useful applications: fighting directionless friction and maintaining your facing angle through tight turns. I'll drive this set piece once more without counterdrifting, how I imagine a newer player might tackle it. One thing I see new players doing a lot is always trying to get a spark and committing really hard when they drift. Now, I'm going to apply counterdrifting to correct my momentum against the water slide and avoid bonking, then counterdrift again to keep my facing angle towards the next straightaway while cutting this tight turn extremely close. It's all going to happen pretty fast. And, as always, you can keep an eye on my minimap icon to see my facing angle. First counterdrift, second counterdrift, third counterdrift, and I'm on this next straightaway. As you can see, I'm set up much better to react to threats on the upcoming straight by keeping my camera pointed much more closely at it. All throughout the track, Storm Rig has pockets of rings along the very edge. You can take these by just driving normally, sure, but as more people drive through them, you'll have to dive deeper and deeper to get your bag. Eventually, to get to any rings, you'll be forced to compromise on your line. Or will you? With counterdrifting, you can get in deep and get out without a scratch. Instead of turning into the ring patch to adjust my momentum using my facing angle, I'm going to counterdrift to keep my facing angle towards the flow of the track, while shifting my momentum angle separately to grab some rings from this ring patch. I'm going to start down here because you usually come into this turn with some speed. I'm going to counterdrift in, and then get out very easily. With counterdrifting, I'm able to continue accelerating straight along the straightaway, while shifting into the ring patch to keep my speed up. The last leg of Gigapolis has a similar conundrum. There are some capsules sitting on a precarious ledge, one wrong move from a light snake. Following them is a sharp 90-degree corner. You can navigate this obstacle without drifting at all, but heavyweights especially will struggle to turn in and out fast enough to avoid the pit below. This is once again where counterdrifting comes into play, sliding us into position with our facing angle aimed back towards safety. As you can see, counterdrifting doesn't have to be all one fluid motion either. Drifting again to shift yourself further to the side and correct your trajectory is very commonplace in my races. Azure City is another great place to showcase counterdrifting's endless uses. As well as strafing left and right, counterdrifting can be used to counter your momentum in cases of low friction, spring grease, or stair jank. To give a point of reference, I'll once again drive a bit without counterdrifting. Basically, I'm just trying to commit to getting a spark with every drift. It feels a bit sloppy, honestly. I guess that's what happens when you're used to constantly making adjustments to your line. Now, I'm going to mix in some counter drifts to clean up my line and correct for stair jank. I'll leave it as an exercise to the viewer to pay attention to how I manage my facing and momentum angles separately. See how I'm always trying to get ahead on facing the next turn. This last straightaway is another great example of how you can use counterdrifting to edge up against a wall without bonking. Counterdrifting need not adhere to skirting geometry. In general, it's a great tool to deviate for ring patches. This continuous line of rings on Endless Mine 1 is a prime example. The ring zigzags from left to right, but the road goes straight. If only there were a way to do both. Is it slower than just driving straight? Undoubtedly. But remember, every ring spent is one more ring in your engine and one less ring for your opponents. Depending on your stats, the ring boost you get from this will offset the speed loss more or less. Maybe this particular deviation isn't really worth it for Class I. Counterdrifting can also save you from cycle hazards while still salvaging your line. It might be a bit slower, but it's leagues faster than getting hit and suffering through spin out and stun. This one is really short. This is going to be a short-ass timestamp too. I don't really have anything more to say. You saw it all. I love Diamond Dust, but many players don't share my opinion. I can see why. The map's main road is entirely ice. But once you know how much countersteering can help, I think this gimmick goes from frustrating to interesting. I haven't really mentioned countersteering yet, and honestly it's much more situational than counterdrifting. However, it's very important at low friction, which typically manifests as ice. Countersteering is just that, steering counter to your momentum angle in order to artificially slow yourself down. Braking is well and good, but countersteering and using rings will output far more power and accelerate you afterwards, whereas braking just slows you down. I'm just going to do a whole lap of Diamond Dust, and if you don't see what I mean, pay attention to my facing angle using the minimap. You'll notice how often I'm facing towards the previous set piece before turning into the next one. Here's a little fun fact. Did you know you can drift store through these ice cubes? I think it's pretty funny. This is the first place I'm really going to start countersteering. I'm going to face almost straight backwards before accelerating this way. And through all of the hairpins in this course, you'll see I'm going to start facing basically backwards very quickly and let the ice physics carry me through the turn. Just like so. And now, a jump scare from arguably one of the most unforgiving maps in the game. In general, I try and cover tracks only on the first page for newer players that may be watching and haven't unlocked everything. However, I can't think of a better place to showcase countersteering at work against faux ice, spring grease. There are some gray springs before the final turn that I see kill more players than half the hazards that actually do damage in this game. Bear with me for a moment, as coming into them with speed is what actually kills people, so I'm a bit far back to allow myself to build that speed. Watch as I hit the gray springs. I'm gonna oversteer pretty dramatically and use rings to boost myself towards my facing angle, fighting the spring. Hello? Where the fuck have you been? Okay. Fighting the spring grease that seeks to slide unsuspecting players off the map. Keep an eye on my facing angle using the minimap once again. What the fuck? Okay, dude. These are not the gray springs I'm talking about. And in general, I would suggest that you try and keep your voltage for this last straightaway here, as this is where you can get by far the most usage out of it. I'm gonna immediately turn to face the inside of the turn, and use a lot of rings to counteract my momentum. For the final portion of this video, I'm gonna go over some applications of counterdrifting in multiplayer. When I said counterdrifting has endless uses, I didn't really mean it in a static sense. Given enough time, you can optimize counterdrifting out of many time attack routes. What I was referring to was combat. Counterdrifting allows you to strafe into other players' lines, maintain tether, or avoid trap items. This is mainly useful against human players. Bots don't often really have the reactivity that necessitates counterdrifting. Let's take a look at this one first. If I recall, nothing in this replay really happens until the first checkpoint. A lot of this is just rockets anyways. Alright. So along here, if you see the minimap, it's kind of like a bunch of staggered straightaways. So I'm going to use counter drifting to maintain my facing angle and just zip around these corners real tight. And that way I can maintain my tether because I'm looking more closely at the person in front of me. Here, I'm going to use counter drifting to basically assess threats and try and bump people. I counter drifted out of the way when I saw that guy had a Jaws, and now I'm going to try and counter drift to, keep tether onto him. I kind of get lost here. And then there's another instance of counter drifting coming up where I'm just going to skirt through here. I kind of counter drift before. You can use it in a lot of different ways. There's no one way to go about it. And then I'm sorry, Pooh, but this is like funny enough that I'm gonna include it in the video. You should always bail, though. Don't let that stop you. Thunder Piston is a much more technical map, so I utilize counter drifting a lot more frequently here. We can start from the beginning. Here, I'm going to counter drift to try and avoid getting weight checked while still keeping my facing angle relatively towards the next turn. Here you can see I'm kind of counter drifting to set myself up to just drive in a straight line. Not much action going on here, just normal driving. can see I counter drift a bit around that corner there. I counter drift to start angling towards this curve more quickly. I counter drift, not really a counter drift. You can see here I am in what I showed off during the video. As you can see, this is kind of a straightaway. It's a lot of very sharp corners back to back. You can kind of just ignore them or counter drift to only angle yourself slightly. I counter drift to avoid that little cutout of the road there. I counter drift there instead of committing for a spark because I'm just going to use rings to accelerate anyways. And then nothing really much happens in terms of counter drifting for the rest of the replay. I hit someone, I die, I win this race. As you can see, I don't have any rings there, so I'm forced to scoot way out on that turn and brake a little bit. Lavender Shrine is another very technical map. Not on the first page, but, you know, I don't really have control over exactly what maps I'm playing in these clips. It's just whatever comes up online. Lavender Shrine has a lot of cycle hazards that counter drifting can help you avoid or at least mitigate the risk of hitting in the first place. You can see I'm going to counter drift there because I have a lot of friction loss from that spring grease. I'm going to counter drift around there a little bit so that I can face towards the next set of spikes and, you know, adjust accordingly if they're coming up. Here I get starved out by Vector Man, and it really kind of ruins my day. I was counting on either the 10 or 15 ring capsule there. Once again, I'm going to counter drift around this corner here. I'm going to counter drift around here, because this is getting really tight with all the hazards building up, the egg boxes and the cycle hazards. That's the overtake of all time that the clip is named for, if the observant people were paying attention to my clip names. And then once again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm remembering that there's a lot of hazards at the end here, so I'm going to be very gradual. I'm going to counter drift like a couple times. And then I don't win this one because I get overconfident that I can snipe that guy with the landmine, and I should have just taken the red springs in hindsight. Big Time Breakdown has quite a few long straightaways, and counter drifting is a great strategy for keeping yourself mobile on these long straightaways where nothing much is happening, diverting for rings, avoiding trap items without having to basically steer into the wall. I'm gonna look behind me there to check if someone behind me rolled something that I should be scared about. Nothing so far. I counter drift a little bit here to get a head start on facing the next turn, and I grab the rings using it as well. I divert for the ring capsules here because I'm pretty far ahead, it's like lap 2, and I can get some free amps from that, which could help in a pinch. I counterdrift a little bit there to avoid the big box in the middle of the road. I counterdrift a little bit there so that once I spend my rings, I'm already facing towards the next straightaway. Honestly, kind of just an unlucky hit for me. Here's where my bananas come back. Both of them get hit by the people ahead of me, and I get to pull right back into the big mosh pit in the front of the race. Here I'm going to counter drift to try and careen into that guy's line so that I can insta-whip, but I really don't have enough speed, so it didn't work out. But the idea is there. I have gotten a lot of people with insta-whip that way. Here I'm going to counter drift to divert for the item I just lobbed so that I can pick it back up. And then here's the moment the clip was named for, the evil bubble trap that gets me. And here is a moment where I counterdrift into someone's line and whip them successfully. And then, despite getting caught in the bubble trap, I managed to clinch 3rd place anyways. I don't really have a scripted outro for this video. Usually I'll write down my thoughts to keep myself on track, but I just really want to reiterate, I say this in every video, but you gotta fail before you succeed, and counterdrifting is something that you can apply literally everywhere. When I say that I use it in almost every one of my races, I was not exaggerating. Hopefully the practical exam portion of the video gave you a bit of an idea on how you can use it to your advantage in multiplayer, but, you know, practice makes perfect. Try and fail and don't be discouraged. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed watching another Ring Racers 102 video. I hope it was informative. Counterdrifting is one of the most important things in the game, in my opinion, so thanks for making it all the way to the end, and hopefully your gameplay can improve. If you have any other ideas for topics that I could do a deep dive into, things that confuse you, things that, you think could use explained, let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching.